Welcome to the LA Business Podcast, your destination to hear stories of how businesses grow and scale. I'm Robert Brill, CEO of BrillMedia.co and the host of this podcast. Now, let's jump right into this week's interview. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the LA Business Podcast. Today our guest is William Scott Goldman, managing attorney and founder of Goldman Law Group. We're talking about marketing, grassroots marketing in the COVID-19 era. I want to hear about how you built your business and your law group. And thanks for being with us, William.
Thanks for having me, Robert. I do appreciate it. Happy to be here. So yeah, it's been quite an interesting year, to say the least. Yes. We were very much a U.S.-based practice, and with COVID, it forced us to rethink some things, and we decided to go more international in scope. And so, reason being, with COVID, it's very geographic. So if one region is getting especially hard hit, other regions might not be quite as much. Mm-hmm. And so we were able to sort of leverage the, conditions, nationwide or worldwide in this case. And when there's a particular surge in one part of the world, it may be trending downward in another part, and so that keeps the workflow a lot more consistent. So it worked out well for us, actually.
So that's interesting. So you have the ability to pivot in and out of territories. Let's take a step back and tell us the type of law that you practice. Let's start there.
Sure. This is primarily intellectual property. Our mantra and mission statement is representing innovation. We represent creative clients, individuals, startups, entrepreneurs, entertainers, advertising agencies, graphic design studios. And so being that what we're doing is trademarks, copyrights, it's federal in scope. And so it's not really state specific like a lot of other areas of law. So it enables us to practice and represent clients in all 50 states and throughout the world.
How long has your practice been in existence?
Since 2006, actually. We had formed it in Washington, D.C., 2006. And over time, it just grew throughout the U.S., a lot of word of mouth, advertising and that sort of thing. And then from there, we did a lot more networking. And over time, it just built, the reputation for the firm built online. We do a lot of outreach. So we like to say that it's a business and branding IP law firm. That's pretty much our niche. And I think it sets us apart from a lot of the more traditional IP intellectual property type firms that are out there.
How does one create a practice around intellectual property and gain traction? In 2006, when you started the firm, how do you build a practice from 2006 to 07, 08? How do you gain traction? Is it a lot of it referrals?
I think early on, yeah, we had a lot of referrals. I had come over from another law firm. And so having worked there for about 14 years, I had a nice client base. And a lot of them, most of them appreciated the service that I had provided. And so they basically came over, referred other people, and so it really took off that way. Just like I said, a lot of word of mouth sort of referrals and advertising and that sort of thing before we expanded even further with internet outreach and some marketing efforts and that sort of thing.
What was the impetus to strike out on your own?
I just had different concepts, different ways of doing things. I thought that my approach would be better, a little more in tune with the 21st century, a leaner business model. And with my focus being on this branding aspect, the branding IP law firm aspect, I figured I would offer a whole new slant and a whole new approach to the practice of IP. Like I say, representing innovation is our mission statement, and by doing so, forming my own firm, it allowed us to pursue more of this innovative type approach to law practice. For instance, we're available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, which is virtually unheard of in the industry, and a lot of innovative approaches that we've offered. So representing innovation is sort of twofold, maybe a play on words being that our approach is quite innovative in the legal field, and the clients that we seek out, the clients that we work with, are innovators in their own right.
So what protection, when you talk about intellectual property and the legal aspect of intellectual property, what are some of the things that ad agencies, other creative people, what should we all be thinking about when it comes to owning and protecting intellectual property?
Well, first and foremost, protecting choosing the right brand name. Branding is everything in the 21st century, and that's something that I'm very attuned to. I started writing the book, or I thought of writing the book, Branding Law Cases and Materials, about 15 years ago, and it finally came to fruition right around 2014, 2015 is when I started getting to work on it in earnest. I think it's very important to choose a correct brand name, something that's catchy, but at the same time, what's considered a strong trademark. You have a continuum of trademark strength, from fanciful coin terms being at the top end.
Fanciful what terms?
Coined.
Coined,
basically word that's coined, such as Exxon in the gasoline realm.
Right. It completely didn't exist before, right?
Right, exactly. Those are considered the pinnacle of trademark strength. Next over, you have what we call arbitrary terms. A good example would be Apple's for computer, or back to the gas station example, Shell for gas stations.
Well, the point on that is that Apple, before the company, was a piece of fruit that you bite into and a shell you found on the beach. And so they took a term that had something completely unrelated, and you made it into a business. Is that
right? That's really the key, yeah. Because if you had a fruit and vegetable store or franchise and you named it Apple, that would be considered a weak trademark. It could be considered merely descriptive, which is on the lowest end, or in best case, it would be considered suggestive, which is slightly better. But in the case, like you said, with Apple, it's completely arbitrary for computers, and so therefore it's a strong trademark, just like Shell for the gasoline company. So I think that's really the first decision, or the first point of awareness that a business needs to have in terms of their branding strategy, picking a name that is protectable, but also that is catchy as well.
All right. Can you tell us about what happens when you use names like my name, Brill? I think there's another company that exists that's called Brill, but because it's my name, tell us about the fact that people can use their own names. How does that work in copyright situation?
Well, to a point, yes. For instance, if your name was Robert McDonald and you decided to open
I knew you were going to go there. That's the common example. It's I can't call myself McDonald's and have a burger joint no matter what my name is, right?
Exactly right. They've already carved out that niche. Now there is the exception if you were doing it first in a specific geographic area before they came along, then you would have common law rights. And there's actually a famous case years ago with Burger King, and there was actually a small mom and pop restaurant, and they actually had rights, or were given rights to their specific geographic area. So of course Burger King has the whole rest of the United States except for that small little carve out. But generally speaking, if you were to emerge as the second user, the junior user in this case, even if it was your last name, you would be blocked as far as moving forward. Or to give another example, if you decided to produce some cleaning pads and you decided to call them Brill cleaning pads, arguably that's close enough to Brillo that even though it's your last name, you could be blocked from doing that as well.
That's fascinating. So when entrepreneurs are starting out, the challenge is there's so many things to think about. I could not for the life of me come up with a decent business name. Brillmedia.co is as creative as it gets. Well, it's so hard.
Well, for a professional services company, there is something to be said for that. Goldman Law Group is a good example. So if you're the primary, the principal of your company, there is something to be said for using your own name. It's been done for years and years, and it's very effective way to go about things. So Yeah, I would say Brill Media, Goldman Law Group, even the case of McDonald's. That's one successful strategy the companies have used, actually naming it after oneself. But there is that disconnect, though, between the marketing department oftentimes and the legal department. And through branding law, what we're trying to do is educate attorneys. We're trying to train them to basically bridge that gap so that the marketing department and the legal department are working hand in hand, sort of bringing the whole name creation process and name protection strategy more into harmony than it's been previously.
So when you work with companies, what are the types of needs that companies bring you on for? Like I imagine, I actually don't know. I don't imagine. I don't know, like, at what point a company would bring you on. Like, do they already have an existing problem? Are they trying to, like, flush it out? Like, what do they do with you?
It really spans the gamut. In some cases, we've had large multinational companies contact us with a specific problem. They might have a dispute, whether it's a domain name or a copyright or a trademark. So that would be one possibility. But more often than not, our client base does consist of the startups, the entrepreneurs, and so they'll actually contact us in the very early stages. Basically, they'll be looking for assistance in clearing the name. With over 5 million trademarks already out there registered with the U.S. government. It's just a staggering number. And as we illustrated before with the Brill versus Brillo example, it's not just a one-to-one relationship. It's not just the trademark, whether or not it's identical. Basically, you're looking for anything that's similar in sound, anything that's similar in meaning, anything that's similar in appearance. And so just the name clearance process is quite something, because the last thing you want to do is to adopt a new business name for your company, establish the branding, and then find out that you have to change it sometime later. Having to rebrand is something I wouldn't wish on anybody. And so picking that name, filing an appropriate, strong application that's going to get approved first time through, and maintaining it, enforcing rights should there be any other parties that have a name that's similar. Enforcement is the trademark owner's responsibility. So once you have that registration, you're not out of the clear. That's why large companies like Coca-Cola will actually hire their own detectives, so to speak, that will approach different establishments. They'll specifically ask for Coke when they know it's a Pepsi establishment, and there could be repercussions if the person there working does not correct them and tell them, no, we only serve Coke products, for instance.
So if I go to a restaurant and I order Coca-Cola and they say sure, if they bring me a Pepsi, that's a big problem.
Yeah. I'm sure you've encountered that before. We all have. When you ask, say, for 7-Up and they bring you Sprite, they need to actually make that clear. So you do have people that are hired by these large companies to monitor, to enforce trademark rights.
Wow.
And so it's an ongoing concern. Likewise, for a lot of the startups, we have a lot of app creators, software developers, and we have to walk them through the process as far as copyright protection. Something that's little known. So a lot of your viewers might appreciate this. Once you create a copyright, or you create anything, any sort of artistic work, or in the case of a computer software that's considered a text work, a work of text, the source code, the developer actually, unless that person is a full-time employee, the developer actually owns the copyright, and a lot of people don't realize this. And so what's necessary is to actually assign the copyright from the developer, who just by law owns the copyright, to yourself as the business owner.
How do you assign it?
Well, it's an assignment agreement, so it's just a contractual type process. And then once you have the assignment agreement executed, then it's actually formalized. You actually want to record it with the Copyright Office. And then the last step is to actually file the copyright in the business owner's name. And then you actually make a notation on the copyright form to where you're noting that there's a discrepancy between the author and the owner, and that's because there's a transfer by assignment. So it's one of those fine points, one of those nuances, and it often trips people up unless they do contact an attorney that deals with startups, entrepreneurs, early stage businesses that's savvy to the issues that can crop up, whether it's trademarks, copyright, patent, that sort of thing.
So the point is, if you go to Upwork and have someone build code or build some tech for you, the person from Upwork owns the code.
Very true. Yeah, technically under law, since they're just a contractor, so they would be the copyright owner, exactly. And so
if you're an employee,
right, that would be the exception. If you're a full-time employee, then it becomes a work for hire type situation, and then none of this is necessary.
So what happens if that person is in another country outside of the US? How do you enforce that?
Well, it's difficult to enforce as far as actually effectuating the process. It's just the way I described. It would be the assignment agreement with somebody who's a resident or citizen of another country, and you just file it with the U.S. Copyright Office and proceed that way.
Interesting. So you started in 2006 with your firm. You got business through referrals. You were telling me that you're doing internet marketing, and there's a variety of other sort of tactics here. Tell us a little bit about what you've done over the years to grow your business.
Sure. Well, you mentioned Upwork. There's another site, UpCounsel, which is similar. So through those, I've done a lot of networking with other lawyers, great source of new client business, and then it's just really expanding the network because just like I had previously, a lot of satisfied clients, a lot of repeat business. It really grows exponentially once they start to spread your name out there, and then other people, colleagues of theirs start to reach out requesting legal services as well. And then it really just takes off from there. It's the old saying, one person tells another person, and that person tells two more, and so on and so forth. And so just by doing that and then reaching out to other lawyers and law firms, it just expands that network, so to speak. And here we are right now. We've probably grown at least tenfold, if not more.
So tell us about 2019 going into 2020. The plot line is you expanded internationally, but take us through how 2020 developed for you and how it developed and how you pivoted.
Sure. Once things started to go south, it was around March, of course, of 2020. Business seemed to drop off to a certain extent. And so at that point, I reached out to a lot of the online contacts through these different sites, a lot of the law firms, a lot of international firms, started doing a lot of networking. What actually worked to our advantage was back in 2019, the U.S. Trademark Office, Patent and Trademark Office, they basically instituted some rules where anybody who's located outside of the United States needs a U.S. attorney in order to even file with the USPTO. That was in August of 2019, so it's sort of some fortuitous timing, and I was able to leverage that to my advantage by reaching out to these other law firms, other potential clients throughout the world, in Europe, China, Japan, Australia. And basically, by building up that base, even Canada and South America as well, there was certainly a demand. And, obviously we have impressive credentials, having done this for almost 30 years. Well, me personally, for 30 years in the firm since 2006. And so it just took off from there.
So is the primary way that you're meeting these folks internationally is through one-to-one meeting opportunities, or are you running ads? Are there forums for you to meet international folk? Is it other lawyers who need this, who need to liaise with you, or are you actually going to the business community internationally?
Good question. Initially, I started with the business community, and then I realized I could attract a lot more quicker by reaching out to the lawyers directly. And so even though it was a little of each, I started focusing more as the year went on, 2020, toward the various law firms. And it was a lot of outreach, a lot of emailing, just cold emailing, that sort of thing. And after that, it's just a matter of building relationships, whether it's through Zoom or email or phone calls. And once you identify the need and they realize that you can fill that need and you're offering quick turnaround and reasonable flat fee billing, which are hallmarks of our firm, that's something that everybody appreciates, whether you're based in the US or outside the US. And so from there, they just realized it was a strong value proposition, especially because of the new trademark rules in effect August of 2019. And it just really worked to our advantage ever since.
That's amazing. And so is this something where you developed a marketing strategy around this, or did you just decide like one day, like this is going to be our new frontier?
I say a little of each. And going back to what we talked about earlier, the nice thing about having my own firm, it's a much leaner practice than where I was previously. And so we're able to pivot quickly. You don't have to run it past multiple layers. I spoke with a few colleagues, got their approval to move forward with the idea. They thought it was a great idea. And then from there, I started with the outreach. And within a matter of days, we were off and running.
That's amazing. Do you do any publishing? Is that part of your marketing strategy?
Yeah, over the past, well, first off was the Branding Law Cases and Materials Volume 1, released in 2016. So that established some firm thought leadership, more or less planting that flag, so to speak. Right. Just a brand new area of law that pretty much has been my baby since about 15 years going now, right around the time I set up the law firm, actually. And from there, I branched into more thought leadership as far as different articles, whether they're blog articles or appearing in other publications and or interviews, podcasts, if you will. And so over time, it's just a matter of building that authority. And of course, that attracts more clients and leads to more business. So it's been very beneficial, to say the least.
So as we're recording this, people are getting vaccinated. Looks like different parts of the country are slowly opening up.
Yes, indeed.
Are you going to continue this strategy of reaching out to folks internationally? Like, are you going to revert back to what was working pre-pandemic? Has this irrevocably changed? I imagine for the better, the business. Like, how do you deal with the old opportunities and the new opportunities?
I don't think they're mutually exclusive, really. As a matter of fact, I recently published an article on the pandemic. What do we call it? Global pandemic or U.S. brandemic. I think if any of your viewers want to run a quick Google search, they can check it out for themselves. But it's very indicative of the 21st century, where you have different vaccines that are referred to by their brand names, again underscoring the importance of branding in the modern world. Pfizer, Moderna, and poor Johnson & Johnson, they've been taking some flack lately. But never before have we had branded vaccines. It's just very emblematic of the age. But yeah, I think, like I said, it's not really mutually exclusive. We're just going to continue with this international approach, most definitely. And as well as all of the inroads we've made throughout the United States. We have clients in just about all 50 states, very heavy contingent in California, as a matter of fact, maybe more than any other state. So yeah, we're going to continue doing more of the same and building it from there.
That's great. Is in the focus for 2021, continue the international growth, continue publishing? The question is, do you hire lawyers and partners and marketers ahead of time, or do you hire lawyers, staff up as is needed? Like that's a business question that I've always wondered about.
Oh, sure. No, I think it's not really necessary to bring folks on until you have the need. And these days, with the internet especially, everything is almost instantaneous, which is very nice. So I could have a need for, say, a trademark in New Zealand at 12 noon, and by the next day I could have somebody on board. A lot of the outreach with these other law firms is nice because it's reciprocal. And so not only am I sending them work, but they'll return the favor. Oftentimes they need a solid intellectual property lawyer in the United States. And so as a result of that, I have people that were sending me work, say in early or mid 2020, and then 3-4 months later, I'll have an inquiry in that same country or a client requesting protection in that same country, and then I have a built-in referral network automatically, and so it just grows from there. Just having these various contacts. Very rarely do I even need to reach out as the resources have continued to expand over the past several months, over the past 12 months, most definitely.
That's really interesting. So you're really reliant on your network to both gain new business and fulfill in your business. That's incredible.
Oh, absolutely. Especially given the types of clients that we work with, which are startups and entrepreneurs. Everybody is very connected, very much 24/7. And so it's just a matter of turning on the computer and seeking what you need and going from there. So, it's very built in for the kind of work that we do.
So, William, before we go, a couple more questions. At the beginning of our conversation, you mentioned that when you started your firm, you wanted to do things differently and you want to operate in a certain way. Can you share with us some of the ways that you're doing things your way, some of the innovation that you've turned on inside your business? Is it the lean infrastructure? I don't have insight into how law firms operate. So what should we know if we ever need an intellectual property lawyer that makes you unique from other companies that might exist in the marketplace?
Oh, well, the legal profession in general is very tradition-based. It has a reputation of being very stodgy, maybe intellectual property a little less so, but the larger the firm, the more rigid they tend to be as a general rule. Well, there are always exceptions, of course. But with our approach, representing innovation, it's all about innovative approaches for innovative clients. And whether it's attorney access every day of the year, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, of course. It's virtually unheard of because, again, representing clients throughout the world, it might be 10, 11 at night, and they're just getting over here on the East Coast of the U.S., and they're just getting started in Asia, for instance, just starting their workday, or Australia, where they're way ahead. Basically my workday starts about 10 or so, talking with clients in the U.S. on the East Coast. As the day goes on, I'll hear from our friends in Europe and California, working till, say 9, 10 o'clock at night. Then the emails start coming in from Asia. So it's a long day, but it's very gratifying. And I think that sets us up, just that alone sets us up very far apart from most of the firms out there. And the fact that we offer predictable flat fee billing, law firms notoriously are a bit opaque as far as their fee structures and that sort of thing. But with us, it's completely transparent, which is nice, especially for startups who don't have unlimited budgets, of course, to actually know right up front how much a project is going to wind up costing them. So there's that. The fact that we're positioned just about 15 minutes from the trademark office, patent office, and copyright office. It's a nice strategic location right here in Washington, D.C. So I think that's a big plus. So really there are a host of different factors that all combine to make us this unique practice group, this unique type of law firm.
That's great. What's your William? As we depart, what is your website?
Sure. The website is www.goldmanlawgroup.com.
GoldmanLawGroup.com. William Scott Goldman, thank you for being with us on the show today.
Yes, thanks for having me, Robert.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the LA Business Podcast. If you like what we're doing on this podcast, please consider subscribing on Apple or Google Play, leaving a 5-star review, and sharing with your friends. If you have any questions, comments, or recommendations for a guest you'd like to hear on this podcast, please email me, robert@brillmedia.co. Thank you. Have a fantastic day.